Okay. All right. So welcome to the Plausible Analytics for Nonprofits webinar. So what is Plausible Analytics? It is an easy to use and privacy-friendly Google Analytics alternative. Here's a screenshot of the dashboard that you see to kind of give a sense of what kind of analytics are being pulled in and what it looks like. But we'll also do a live demo just to get really into the specifics. So some advantages of plausible. I mean, a really, really big one is that the old Google Analytics, which is called Universal Analytics, you cannot migrate that data to the new Google Analytics 4 platform. It's such a significant rewrite and a significant difference in interpreting site traffic and metrics that it's not an apples to apples understanding of site visitors and behaviors. Whereas plausible analytics does still have a very similar framework for how page views are counted, how site traffic is measured. And so you can migrate your old Google Analytics data into plausible. There is a little bit of limitations with filtering and whatnot when you with that migrated data, but it's still available in a lot of ways, and we'll get into some of those specifics in the demo as well. Another thing is that the new Google Analytics platform is really designed for large enterprise sites that are doing a lot of e-commerce work. And we've found it to be a pretty steep learning curve. I mean, all of this is somewhat subjective. Some people are able to kind of wrap their heads around it pretty quickly. But yeah, in general, we're finding people to really struggle with it. And honestly, a lot of people were already struggling with Google Analytics, the old version. So it's like an even steeper learning curve from our vantage point. Whereas plausible analytics is designed more for small to medium-sized organizations. So it's easier to learn. It's more intuitive, from the get-go. The other thing is that so GDPR is the European Union's big data privacy law. It's what kind of prompted people to update their privacy policies, people to start using cookie consent banners, make it easier to delete data that's being collected about users. And it's honestly one of the big reasons that there is this new redone version of Google Analytics. This Google Analytics 4 was an attempt to become compliant because right now Google Analytics is not. So it's straight up illegal to use Google Analytics in Europe, and that's been decided in several different courts in France, in Australia, or not Australia, Austria, and somewhere else, I think the Netherlands. And it's still actually not, even the new Google Analytics 4 is still not GDPR compliant, because as long as Google's running their servers in the United States and processing data here in the US, because our privacy laws are so terrible, it's going to continue to be illegal. It is right now in the courts, and Google is fighting that decision. And so European courts might favor Google and the new Google Analytics, but as of today, it's still not GDPR compliant. As far as I think everyone on this call, in practical terms, sure, you are technically supposed to follow GDPR laws, even if there's a single visitor from Europe to your site. But in practice, in reality, they're not going to be going after US based, especially small nonprofits who are good people. They're going after the shady corporations that are sucking up people's data and using it unethically. So on a practical level, I don't think that anyone really needs to worry about that. You can use the new Google Analytics platform and you're not going to get some kind of knock at the door for violating people's privacy. But to like that second to last bullet point, it is still proprietary software that is coming from big tech, that's coming from Google. They've had, lawsuit after lawsuit at this point, violating people's rights. So it is, Plausible is a really great, more ethical alternative in that regard. And if you've ever tried to get some assistant with some kind of question you have with any sort of Google service, there's no in-person support. So you're really just at the mercy of like help documents and web forums and other people who are using Google products. And whereas Plausible is like a team that is very responsive.
What? You okay? Yeah, I'm good.
So there's that advantage too. And then it's really easy to provide team access to other people with a shared email address and login, right? You're not kind of beholden to like Google's accounts management system. There are some advantages that Google Analytics still has over Plausible. So a big one is, and this was a big selling point with the new version of Google Analytics 4, which is that if you have an app and a website and you want some kind of relationship between the two, or if you have two different websites, or more than two, and you want to be able to see that data tracked holistically, like me, for example, if I was to visit one of your sites, and then from there I'm like directed to another like sister site or sibling site, you can configure Google Analytics for it to track that single session and see that behavior between web properties or apps in a single dashboard. In Plausible, you can set up Plausible Analytics on every single one of your websites. But you would be, as soon as I leave website A and go to website B, that data is now in two different dashboards, one for my activity in website A and one for my activity in website B. And it also doesn't work for apps. If you have some kind of app, you can't install Plausible Analytics and track it that way. The other advantage is, because it's a Google product, it integrates well with Google ad services. So if you run Google ad campaigns, it's going to be pretty easy to generate reports showing like, I ran this specific ad campaign and like this percentage of people, donated on the site. You can still create goals for things like Google ad campaigns, for things like newsletter traffic in Plausible Analytics. So some of that is still possible. It's just not going to be quite as robust as Google Analytics. And then another advantage, Google Analytics is like quote unquote free to use. You're not paying anything monetarily to Google. You're paying with your data that they do like anonymize, but they're taking that and using it, to maintain their hegemony in the world. And yeah, with Plausible, you do have to pay. I'll get to the pricing pretty soon. So it starts at $9 a month and it's based on your site traffic. So in terms of pricing, you can have up to 50 websites under one account. So if you do have multiple websites, then yeah, it's just a single account that you're paying for. And then that price is based on your total monthly page views. And so that's in aggregate. So if you have 3 websites and one's getting 1,000 page views a month and another's getting like, 20,000 page views a month, then you're at like 21,000 page views. So you would be at that first tier, 10K, 10,000 page views. You're starting at $9 a month or 90 for the year. As soon as you go from like 99,000 page views a month up to 100,000 or more, then you're at that $19 a month tier. and up and onward into higher and higher traffic. And kind of one thing that's nice that kind of goes back to like, this is a good kind of reputable ethical company. You're not seeing this stark price jump from, 10K to 100K to really, that you see with a lot of platforms where they really punish you for success and growth. So that's really nice. It's very predictable. So you can budget accordingly. So as far as like what's involved with getting it set up, your team would create the account. You would invite Dev Collab like us as admins. And then we would then install the actual like Plausible software onto your website. There's a Drupal module and there's a WordPress plugin. Neither of them have license fees. It's pretty quick to install and configure. And in part, that's thanks to Steven, who's on this call. So shout out to Steven for, he has added a feature to the Drupal module that will create a reporting page within your website that shows your Plausible Analytics there for anyone who's like, well, you can configure it for like what roles can see that page, but it's only visible to someone logged into the website and has the proper permissions to see that dashboard, which is really cool. And if you have Google Analytics running, which I think all of you on this call do, the old Google Analytics, we would migrate that Google Analytics data. It's honestly a pretty seamless thing. It's a matter of like making sure we have admin access to your Google Analytics data, and then it's kind of a literal click of a button to import that. And then we can also connect it with, if you have a Google Search Console account, we can connect it to that too. That's also pretty simple. As long as we are added to your Google Search Console account, then again, it's kind of a click of a button to get that up. So we can like get you up and running, like really like within a week for sure, like oftentimes within a day if we have enough time. And I'll talk more about like what I mean by Google Search Console. So I'm going to jump into the live demo. And again, if you have questions that have come up along the way from all of this, drop them in the chat and we will answer them at the end with the Q&A portion. So the first thing is I wanted to just show a screenshot of the Google Search Console integration because I didn't want to get too far into any of your dashboard. So this is a screenshot from the Center for Land Use Interpretation. They were generous enough to share a snapshot of their data. And so you can see if you've got Google Search Console set up, this integration will then show you, here are the search terms that people are searching to bring you to their site. So, most people are searching for this Big Ten curve. A lot of people are searching for the name of the organization, etc. So I'll leave this and come over to the dashboard. And so here's our dashboard for our devcollaborative.com website. And right now, kind of by default, it's showing month to date. So we're just halfway through the month of June. So that's where we're at. And you can see right now it's displaying this data by each day. So you can see kind of the up and down of the site traffic. You can see, not to brag too much, but this blog post I wrote about how to set up an RSS feed on a Drupal website's the top page earner. And as you can see, lots of fellow Drupal nerds come into our site from Drupal.org or Google. We don't have Google Search Console set up entirely, so we can't see those search terms. But my guess is something for us to do. This is our own website, the Cobbler's Children and their poor shoes. We need to get that set up for ourselves. Some people are coming from DuckDuckGo. Yandex is another search engine. And let me just kind of filter by a little bit more. So like, let's do the last 30 days. And so this is a week view. And again, here's the day view, and you can see, so these numbers all update based on whatever filters I have set up. If I was, you can do a custom range. So if I come back maybe from April on to May, then here's the site traffic here. You can see here again are the top pages. My blog post is still winning. And you can also see where people are coming from in the world, device, so desktop versus mobile, browser, operating system. And if I was like, okay, I just want to see everything that is blog related, right? Then I can come in here and filter by page and say, and actually this is nice. So you can do is not to exclude specific pages. You can also do contains. So like I'll do that for this. So I want anything that's that contains blog in it, and apply that filter. And now we're just seeing the blog listing page and then all of our specific blog posts. And we can then see, the traffic and also the most popular blog posts. And if I click into details, then I see the full list here. And let's see. So that's filtering. The other thing, yeah, so thanks to Stephen, you can have this dashboard directly in your website. And that's true for both WordPress sites and Drupal sites. And this is great because one of the most common challenges that we hear from you all is how can we be better about just even like bringing analytics more into a regular workflow. It's a lot of people, it's like set it and forget it when it comes to analytics. And so even just like having it in the website and not having to mess around and like make sure someone has the right permissions to be in your Google Analytics account, and remember to go to analytics.google.com to look at things, right? Like that's an advantage there. It's just right there in your website. Another thing that I really love about Plausible is you can configure it to send out email reports. And I'll share that configuration page. So here you can choose, if you get a weekly email report, you can choose who receives that email report. There's also monthly, and then this one is really cool. So you can get traffic spike notifications. So, if I write a blog post about some kind of esoteric Drupal topic that just really gets people excited, then, our site might end up getting a bunch of visitors and reading that, and we'll get an email then knowing that. And so that's really great because then you can be a little bit more proactive. Maybe a new report is published on your site and it's getting a lot of traction. And then you would get proactively emailed about that.
This is so great.
Yeah. So that's that feature. And then I'll end with the thing that is again, like I think one of the one of the most limiting things, which is kind of frustrating. And I want to reach out to the Plausible team and see if they have this on their roadmap, because the reporting, so you can take a screenshot, right, of this entire page and share a report that way. But as far as like sharing a report, with data that is, that you can manipulate and work with, the only thing that it does is you can click this download button, and then if you see in my bottom screen, it creates a zip of all of these different CSV files. And I'll share a screenshot of what that looks like. So you just get a very like straightforward plain CSV file of, I mean, to their credit, there's a lot of different kind of slices of that data that you get. So this is just one example, but so here's like visitors and page views for May 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way up to whatever date range I had set my filter to. And I think the idea is like, okay, now that it's in this CSV format, you can then sort of spruce up that spreadsheet however you see fit, right? I mean, you have the data so you can generate charts and whatnot, but you're not getting like a nice like PDF version of this that like Google Analytics does. So that's one limitation I'd say, is the reporting there is a little bit less robust. But again, because it's so easy to share, you can get your teammates into the direct dashboard and have them look at this themselves. So that, I believe, covers the demo and the presentation. So I can pause and take a breath and just like answer any questions. Happy to like dive into at least our dashboard. Happy to kind of share any other aspects of this with people. So maybe Johanna, do you want to let me know?
Well, first of all, thank you everyone so much for coming. We've got 16 folks on here who are not us. That is great. I love seeing people who are interested in not big tech. So we have a bunch of questions, so we can go through them one by one, and then we can also just drift into discussion other questions as needed.
Mhm.
And you can feel free to keep using the chat. So I'm just gonna start with the first question from Amy. And feel free to like turn your video on or keep it off or whatever, but pipe up if you want to clarify your question or expand on it. So she has a quick pricing question. Does the monthly fee automatically adjust depending on the number of page views per month, or do you have to pay a yearly subscription up front? Do you happen to know that?
Yeah, you can choose whether to pay on a monthly basis or upfront for the year. I don't know. That's a good question as far as I don't know if you pay for the year at a certain level and then it goes up to a different level, how they handle that. Um, yeah, so I think that's something that we could follow up and do a little research and kind of email out the participants with that. We haven't had anybody that those thresholds are pretty wide. We haven't had anybody kind of hovering between one or the other where that kind of trips them into that next tier yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask plausible
Hmm.
questions if we can't answer them, and when we share back this recording, we can send information as we get it.
Yeah.
And then Amy's other question is, with the current version of analytics, you can identify traffic sources for a given piece of content. Can you see this info with Plausible?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. So if you click into a specific page, then those sources update for that specific page. So you can see, yeah, like the About Us page, there's a few more people coming from like the Design for Drupal conference event because we're sponsoring it. So they probably like, oh, what's Step Collaborative all about? And came to us that way. Yeah.
Amy, does that cover your questions?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure, sure. So next up is Olivia. Olivia is asking, how does Plausible handle integrations for automation? It looks like it is not a connected site in Zapier, which we
Mm.
use. Do you have recommendations? Stephen just saw your question and already started researching that. Stephen, do you want to share what you found?
Yeah, I found, so because Plausible is open source, on their GitHub page, there's a request from somebody to add Zapier integration. It's from 2020, and it doesn't seem like there's much movement on it, but that is a request that is in. We'll see. Maybe they'll add that at some point, but it doesn't look like they currently have that. But there are other people who would like that too, so maybe they'll add that in the future. That was all I was able to find in the past like 5 minutes.
Yeah, Zapier is super cool. I'm curious, like what are some specific kind of conditions that you would want to set up?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Olivia.
So one of the things we currently do is we use it with the RSS feed to track pages that we've published, and we're interested in sort of hits on the page in a particular period of time. And so right, like one of the things that we do with Google Looker Studio or Google Studio, whatever they rebranded as, is like merge those together. And it allows us to like look by quarter that we've published. And I'm sure there's a way to like work around it.
Yeah.
Probably with just the information in here and not using the Zapier integration. I just would have to like think it through differently than how it's currently set up.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm just going to suggest that we can do is we can see if, because that's a really specific question, Clinton, like maybe we can also get a contact person for you to ask specifically, because it's worth asking, just because with an open source product you never know what is going on that you're not necessarily finding. So I don't know, did you have any other thoughts?
I have like a tangential thought, which is that we haven't set this up for our own site, but you can set up specific goals. So like downloads of PDF files, hitting the submit button on a donation form, just visiting a certain page. Yeah, so that's not, yeah, didn't touch on that on the live demo, so just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, so Olivia, I wonder if that might actually help you. So we can follow up with you on that as well, to see if that might like kind of help with your use case.
Thanks.
Sure. So our next questions are from Miriam. Hi, Miriam. Can Plausible track PDF downloads? I believe that yes, it can.
Yes. Yeah. That's what that goals piece I just mentioned was. Yeah.
And the other question was, is there anything that would stop us from having both Google Analytics and Plausible running on the site? So if we try Plausible and decide it's not robust enough, we would still have the GA analytics from that time period. Personally, I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, we have a few clients doing that.
Yeah.
I think we're doing that.
Yeah, we're doing that too.
On our extremely high traffic website.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then.
And I think you get a free trial with Plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a month.
You get a month
for free.
Yeah, when you register. So, and that's from when you create your account. So.
Yeah. Also, Dee and I found a hack. If you want to really go on the cheap, you can you can pay monthly and then not pay, and then your dashboard ends up frozen, but the JavaScript is still running on the site. So then you can go like a couple months without looking at your analytics, and then just pay for the next month, and then unlock your dashboard and get all your data again.
Okay. But but we want to support alternatives to big tech.
Yes,
So if
we
you can
do.
avoid
But don't
doing
do
that, thanks so much, Clayton.
to avoid paying $9.
Um,
Yeah.
so, Miriam, did that address all your questions?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Olivia, one of the finest students in the land, has another question. If GA4 prevents you from migrating because the data is captured so differently, how does migrating work with Plausible? Is it that Plausible captures data more similarly to UA? If not, how does that not lead to errors? Great question.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, in a nutshell, yeah, I mean, the differences between Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics definitely starts getting outside my wheelhouse as far as the technical understanding goes. I definitely read a blog post about it and understood 60% of what was being thrown at me with the technical jargon. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of analytics tools out there. And like things like page views and bounce rate is a very like universally held way of measuring things. So there's always going to be a little bit of discrepancy between those tools as far as, you know, how they're detecting or not detecting bot traffic. It starts getting into the and yeah, Johanna and Stephen, feel free to chime in if you want to add any more technical specifics. But
Yeah, I think the overall message. So I don't know. I think part of your question, Olivia, is like, what if you are using GA4 or you want to switch back into GA4? Can you port the data into GA4? That is a very good question that I should write down.
No, and I think the answer to that is no.
The answer is no. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's the real like the
danger.
main takeaway that we've seen and a number of clients have seen from GA4 is one, it's really hard to use. It's just the interface is like very complex and you're starting from a clean slate. Once you turn it on and you start collecting data, that's it. There's no way to import, there's no way to like start from your old data. It's just you're just starting fresh. So that's why there's been you've been getting a lot of emails when you log into your Google Analytics, you get this like countdown thing. Like they're really trying to urge you to move early to get that, you know, to get some data in there early on. So when the switch happens, which is in next month, you know, you're not just starting from that clean slate. When the switch happens right away, you have some historical data. So because there's import.
I'll say in summary, it you know, here is a look at our entire site traffic, right? And so everything up until recently is we should kind of go back and check, I guess, of like
most of what you're seeing here is from Google Analytics.
And what I've found is that it's comparable, right? If I was to like look at the visitor count here and go back to like the old Google Analytics, it's in the same range. So you can, yeah. I feel like
numbers
might be a little bit rounded or something.
Yeah. And I would just say this is like a very Faustian bargain situation with a very like particular set of trade-offs. This like sort of jumping off point from Google Analytics if you choose to get off it. They've made it more proprietary and it's going to be a whole learning curve to be able to interpret it, but it's even going to be a learning curve to build reporting that is useful to you. And, you know, the old Google Analytics is based on sort of more standard web, you know, just like since the dawn of the web, sets of things that are measured. And there are common things like bounce rate and page views and visits and all those things that we're all familiar with that, you know, if, as somebody who was a staff person in a nonprofit, right, a lot of times you're thinking, wow, I have to report back on a program or to a funder about, like, and this is one of my data sources. Like, if you don't need all the sophisticated features of GA4, this is going to work, and you're not going to have to onboard and kind of be trapped in this proprietary analytics environment.
Yeah.
I also put a link to our sort of summary of the current state of alternatives to Google Analytics blog post. And if so, there are other things out there that you can migrate to if you don't like Plausible. We've actually we've kind of landed on Plausible because we feel like it's the best. It's in the best shape of all the alternatives right now. And price wise and features wise, it's just like kind of really, really usable. And yeah, so there's not a clear answer to this. It's like, it's definitely difficult. And I really encourage folks to, like Miriam, I think that was your question. Like, if you want to have both on your site and just see how it feels and see how the landscape evolves, that's great. Anything that will potentially allow you to break free of Google in the future, should you choose to do so, is a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if anybody wanted to do that, it would just be signing up for the account. You get the month trial for free. And then it would take like an hour or so for us to install the module on your site. It might take a little bit longer for us to do the import of your old Google Analytics data if we need to coordinate getting access to your account. Sometimes that can be a little bit difficult if an organization has kind of lost access to their account. You know, it could be in somebody's old email address or something. We've had some difficulties there. But if you're trying to, you know, just keep in mind budget and time in terms of how much work we have to do, it's just, you know, it's installing a Drupal module and then coordinating with you getting access to your Google Analytics account for importing. So we're talking like an hour or two typically. And then from there, if you decide that this is something you want to keep, you would pay either the annual fee or the recurring monthly fee with Plausible for, you know, $9 a month.
I see Sandra asked about how does social media fit with Plausible? And I see that Facebook came up as a source. Are there other ways to integrate it? So yeah, the other way that you can kind of integrate it a little bit more is through these UTM tags. And so that's the kind of thing where you'll, yeah, again, this like the specifics I get a little fuzzy on, so maybe someone else can pipe in. But when you see a URL, oftentimes you'll see the URL to a page plus question mark plus UTM equals something something. And that's a way to basically tag this link as like coming from a specific newsletter or coming from a specific platform. And so those get tracked in Plausible as well, so you can get a little bit more specific snapshot of where something is, where people are coming from to get to your site. I don't think there's really anything, I can't think of anything else from like a social media integration standpoint beyond that Plausible does. But I think that covers it really. Most
Thank you.
people's, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, really just asking yourself, what do we want to track? And does Plausible like what's most important? Because folks, it can be really overwhelming and feel like, oh, like we're not tracking as many things. Well, a lot of that is noise, right? In most small to medium-sized nonprofits, or even larger nonprofits, to be honest with you, there are certain things that you're tracking as an organ that you need to track, and too much extra stuff is noise. It's for enterprise level enormous organizations. That's what Google Analytics is built for, right? With giant silos who crunch numbers for a corporation. So if you don't need that, and if you're not sure, again, running both gives you an exit ramp should you choose to ever take it. And also, like, you could also just use Plausible for a while and be like, am I getting what I need? If you are, you can, there is, technically speaking, is there going to be a performance like hit if you have two analytics JavaScript? In modern browsers, not really. Sure, probably like a tenth of a millisecond.
Yeah, Plausible it's a very lean JavaScript
Yeah.
plugin. It's very, very small, especially compared to Google's.
Right. It's more like if you're running both, you're also running Google, which is bigger.
Yeah.
And in fact, you're going to save weight on your site, and you're going to improve performance by getting rid of Google more than Plausible.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but it's not, if you were running both, like, I don't think a human being is going to notice that as a performance problem.
Yeah. I did want to point out here's what I kind of mentioned of some of the limitation of the imported data is when you start clicking through and getting into like specific filters, like this, this like Drupal newsletter, like it can't kind of pick up on that from the old Google Analytics sites. So you see there, like some of that filtering isn't going to be able to apply to your legacy data.
It's more just the raw numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? I think we answered everything in the chat, right?
Could you just show us a report again, just in how you got it, and just like a month? I mean, please.
Sure. Yeah. So if I can filter by the time frame. So like if I wanted to see the last 30 days, then I would come here. If you wanted to see it by week instead of days, then you can change it that way. So that's how you would get that report. As far as like if you wanted something kind of more downloadable, then you would click this download icon right next to the time format, and that would download a zip file of well, I could even show that of like, so here's the export. So it's like all of these different CSV files. So like visitors, I feel like is one of the most helpful files. And so, I'd open that up in Google Sheets or LibreOffice or Excel, and then you can then do with it whatever you want to do.
Are you showing something?
Oh, I am. Oh, yeah, let me share my screen. Sorry. So it's probably not sharing my
mouse moving all over the place.
So
There it is.
there it is. So this is the this is the zip file. This is the unzipped file. So this is the folder of all of the CSV files that you have, right? So if you want to be like, I just want to see the info about operating systems, here it is. So it's okay. It's not great, yeah.
I want to just, Michaela has a question. Could you elaborate a bit more on what kind of filters won't work for our legacy data? By which they mean that the info imported from Google Analytics.
Yeah, so I think it's this is something that I think we're still trying to get a little bit more familiar with, but if I was to filter by, basically all of the source traffic, and it'll give you a little icon here. It says stats do not include data imported from Google Analytics. So filtering by the source. I think it's probably all of those actually. Let's see. Yeah. If I filter by the country, really any of the filtering, like the what am I trying to say? The facets of like, just show me visitors from this country, just show me visitors from Google, just show me visitors from Mac OS. It's just going to pull in the analytics that you like directly from Plausible. So yeah, the earlier you start using it, the better, I'd say. But you can always go back to your like Google Analytics dashboard with your legacy Google Analytics and create reports from your old data that way.
Yeah, that gets frozen in Amber, I believe.
Yeah.
Except that you can click on it, unlike Amber. Quick question before anyone else hops off. Does anyone object to us sharing this whole recording publicly, including your questions? You're welcome to message me back channel if so, but your questions were really good, so I'm thinking of including as much as we can. Cool. Okay. Any other questions? I'm gonna follow up. We'll follow up with about that question involving like what happens at a pricing threshold, and see if someone from Plausible can just answer that. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We are really excited that everyone's really so interested in not Google.
Yeah. And then, yeah, Olivia asked a very important question. So, okay, so if anybody wants Plausible, what should they do? Yeah, submitting a help desk ticket is a great, that's the first step for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Happy
rest of your day.
Wednesday. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.